Chapter 326. Somewhat tricky frantic hoofsteps resounded approaching swiftly from the distance. Han Sha-o was atop the city wall to oversee the construction progress when he saw Commander Night Falk anxiously charge over on the back of a warhorse. Flying off of his horse, Falk ran all the way to the foot of the city wall where Han Sha-o was standing. Panting heavily, he looked up at the ladder. "Your lordship, the caravan transporting the war chariots and other equipment from Sea Mist City has been robbed by several bandit groups. They say they will only release the merchants and goods if we pay them 50,000 gold coins." The bandit groups along the road from Sea Mist City to Bretel City weren't large in scale. Han Sha-o had ordered this equipment from some of Phoebe's merchant guild contacts. Not only had he reminded them to be careful of the bandits on the way, he even had Fox send people along to escort the convoy. These small bandit groups certainly shouldn't have had the guts to make a move. Han Sha-o's face darkened when he heard the news from Falk. "You say that several bandit groups allied up to make a move?" Falk's expression was quite ugly as he answered with a nod. "That's right. One bandit group alone definitely wouldn't dare to do something like this. However, 5 bandit groups banded together this time. The guards of the caravan simply couldn't hold up against them. Your lordship, these damnable bandits are seeking death. I'll immediately lead the knights in the city to exterminate them all." "Wait!" Han Sha-o shouted to stop Falk's impulsive action. He thought for a bit before asking a purchase of war chariots and equipment this time. How many people knew about this? The soldiers who were to escort the goods all knew. "Why, my lord?" Falk was confused, not knowing why Han Sha-o had suddenly mentioned this. Han Sha-o asked with a cold snort, "How could it be a coincidence that these bandits knew which day the caravan would arrive? How come they suddenly banded together and even dared demand a ransom after robbing the caravan? Can't you see how abnormal this is?" Falk was in shock after these words rang out. He shouted, "My lord, you are saying that there may be spies among our people?" Exclamation mark. "Not maybe but for certain." Han Sha-o suddenly shouted loudly, "I will not pursue your negligence of duty for now. You have half a day to find the spies and execute them. On the other hand, don't just accept anyone in the next recruitment drive. Kick out all of those whose backgrounds aren't clean." "Yes, my lord," Falk replied loudly. His face was icy as he leapt on a horse and quickly rode off. Since this matter had been his duty, he wouldn't absolve himself of responsibility from such a big incident no matter what. Lawrence had made it clear that his life and death would be up to Han Sha-o when he stepped foot in Bretel City. Having witnessed Han Sha-o's powerful strength, Falk knew full well that this city lord was definitely not the benevolent, lenient sort. Falk cursed that traitor while quickly thinking of a way to catch him. An hour later, 300 bulky knights in shining armor were neatly lined up in a wide marble square in front of the city lord's mansion in accordance with Falk's commands. If one overlooked his negligence of duty at the moment, judging from their posture and presence, Falker's training had indeed produced knights with the demeanor of a knight regiment. This indeed shows the capabilities of Falk as a superior knight officer. Han Sha-o sat in the city lord's mansion, not caring what methods Falk would use to find the spies. He was pondering how to eradicate these bandits and clear the path from Sea Mist City to Bretel City as soon as possible. Han Sha-o had placed all of his attention on the possibility that the 7 Grand Duchies would muster up a raiding force at any moment. However, he'd forgotten about the large and small bandit groups along this trip. There were more than a dozen forces, either small-scaled bandit groups with over 100 members or bands with only a dozen members who didn't even warrant a mention. These groups scurried messily around Bretel City and the 7 Grand Duchies all the time. They were on the same level as the large groups with thousands of bandits. After killing Troda last time, Han Sha-o had thought that these petty bandits wouldn't dare act trashly, so he hadn't paid them any heed. He hadn't expected them to stab a knife into his back at such a crucial moment, robbing 100,000 gold coins worth of battle equipment. This birthed a killing intent so fierce in Han Sha-o he wanted to exterminate them from the world. The road between Bretel City and Sea Mist City was the most important channel that connected Bretel City to the Lancelot Empire. If Bretel City wanted to develop, then there were no words that could describe the importance of this road. If immigrants were robbed before they could even reach Bretel City, no one one would dare to settle down there no matter how eloquent Han Shao was. They're asking for it. It's not that I didn't want to give them a chance to live. Han Shao had cleared up his thinking and his fingers subconsciously tapped on the chair armrest as he spoke resolutely. Falk didn't fail to live up to Han Shao's trust. He only took 2 hours to find the spies. Han Shao didn't actually see who they were, but he could hear mournful hair-raising wail after wail echoing from outside the city lord's mansion. The scalp-tingling tragic screams only lasted for a bit before petering out. 5 minutes later Falk walked in filled with trepidation. He humbly paid his respects to Han Shao and said in a low voice, "Sir Count, I have neglected my duties." Straightening his somewhat lazy posture, Han Shao indifferently swept a sharp glance at Falk and asked, "Got something out of the interrogation?" Nodding his head, Falk answered, "A total of 3 new recruits. All of them are infiltrators from the surrounding bandit groups. Because their bodies were strong and we were lacking people, I didn't investigate them carefully and let them join our night regiment. It was all my negligence. I ask your lordship for your punishment." It was as Falk said. Bretel City was utilizing every person to the extreme. Talents like Falk who could train soldiers were truly too scarce. Falk's temporary carelessness could be considered negligence of duty, but Han Shao had no candidate for his replacement. Han Shao was silent for a bit before saying with a cold humph, "I will take note of this for now. If you can contribute achievements to redeem your mistake when we exterminate the bandits, I will overlook your negligence this time." Falk nodded heavily. He solemnly struck a ceremonial posture and said in a loud voice, "Rest assured, Sir Count, this kind of thing shall never happen again. None of the bandits involved in this robbery will escape. I give you my word as a knight." "Very well. Assemble 100 knights. We are going visit their lair and see if they have the qualifications to take 50,000 gold coins from my hands." Han Shao narrowed his eyes and stood up. Falk could clearly sense the thick killing intent radiating from his body. He understood that the bandits who had acted in such a wanton manner would be paying a painful price soon enough. Night fell. A moonless night. The pitch black sky was like a canvas smeared with a dense thick layer of ink, reducing line of sight to a bare minimum. Torches burned brightly as they headed in a direction where the air was humid and wild weeds grew. A dozen huge rafts were lining up on a long river shaped like a willow leaf. Many strong sturdy men stood on these rafts, their hands also holding torches. The noisy sound of an argument echoed out from these people. Falk rode a warhorse, a torch in his hand. He frowned at the bandits on the rafts on the distant small river and scolded in a low voice, "Cunning bandits, they unexpectedly chose this place for the transaction. This makes things a bit difficult." This place was very far from Bretel City and simply wasn't anywhere between Seamist City and Bretel City. Instead, it was in the area connecting Bretel City to the 7 Grand Duchies. Last time Han Shao had caught Helentina, it had been precisely at this river where he transported the 6 magic crystal cannons back to Bretel City. However, because the 6 cannons were so heavy, it had taken him 2 days to return from this place. This time Han Shao's group that solely consisted of knights took only half a day to arrive here at night to meet the deadline. It was undeniable that these bandits had picked a good place this time. Once they took their 50,000 gold coins, they would be able to quickly get away using the rafts. Han Shao's group were all knights, simply unable to pursue them on this small river. When they notified Han Shao of the place the transaction was to take place, it was already too late for the latter to make preparations. They had involuntarily fallen into a passive state. This group of bandits really isn't simple. They've arranged everything properly and even took the advantage from us. They can easily escape on the rafts after taking the gold coins. The knights can't pursue them. It seems we have encountered some difficult to handle bandits. Han Shao looked at the flashing lights of the bandits before him and spoke to Falk. "Sir Count, how should we handle this? Even if you're a necromancer, the dark creatures can't make move in the water." Falk spoke worriedly to Han Shao. He was ready to redeem his mistake with all of his enthusiasm, intending to make a big move this time. "There are some light mages on their side. It seems these bandits have been planning this for a long time. These light mages must have been arranged specially for me. Could it be that this matter isn't so simple? That there are people secretly plotting against us?" Han Shao's voice was soft but surprised. The Yin demon he'd secretly released had caught sight of 2 low-ranked light mages. There was a light journeyman mage and a light adept mage. These ranks of light mages had limited influence against higher rank creatures like evil knights. However, Even a middle-level holy light spell could cause considerable damage to the gargoyles. Therefore Han Shuo immediately became cautious upon seeing the two light mages. He waved his arm at Falk. Halt for now. Let's me ascertain the situation first. If this is a trap, we'll immediately retreat. Han Shuo was left with only one Yin demon now. His observation was no longer as speedy as before, and he had no way of covering everything at the scene. He'd started to consider whether he should spend a while in closed-door training to refine the higher rank mystical demon. Circling around the rafts on the river, the Yin demon indeed discovered the war equipment that Han Shuo had procured, and even Fabian and Jack of Boost Merchant Guild among them. The bandits had tied them up tightly and placed two glinting steel knives against their necks. Their faces looked wan and forlorn, obviously having been immensely frightened. There were a dozen merchants as well as 30 or so guards from other merchant guilds tightly tied up beside Fabian and Jack. The bandits surrounded and watched them closely. After winning the gamble against Cameron, the Boost Merchant Guild had nationally become the richest merchant guild in the empire. Cameron had fallen into a slump and lost the trust of his merchant guild. The Boost Merchant Guild had taken advantage of the situation to develop, gradually becoming the most active amongst the major merchant guilds. The war equipment Han Shuo had purchased was being transported by Boost along with several other merchant guilds. If they didn't have a good first experience, it would negatively affect their impressions of Bretel City. Cooperation would be difficult to continue from then on. Therefore it was not just Fabian and Jack. The safety of these merchants and guards were equally important. If their safety wasn't guaranteed, the subsequent fallout would be hard to make up for, even if the bandits were all killed. Han Shuo had a major headache just looking at the strict security of the bandits. Dorcas, what should we do next? A crude-looking burly man over 2 meters tall, obviously the leader of these bandits, was currently asking a young man sitting on the raft. This young man had a resolute face, his eyes burning with wild ambition. This young man was dressed in the clothes of a minor bandit lackey with a height of nearly 1 meter 90 centimeters. He stood tall like a straight pole that never bend nor break, and the vividly colored bandit outfit couldn't hide the wild light of ambition in his eyes. This young man was named Dorcas. He glanced at the bandit leader and said confidently, "Rest assured, I've made careful preparations beforehand. That I didn't let you kill these captives will make them apprehensive, not to mention we also hold the advantage with the rafts on this small river. We even used a large amount of money to recruit 2 light mages who can stop the assault of gargoyles. This plan is absolutely safe. They have no other choice but to bring the money." Dorcas, the civilian genius of the Imperial Academy of Strategy. So it's him. No wonder, Han Shuo murmured upon hearing the two's conversation through the Yin demon who was circling around the young man. Chapter 327, a talented person. The nature of the Lancelot Imperial Academy was different from that of the Babylon Academy. Lancelot Imperial Academy was an academy that groomed talented strategists with magicians, swordsmen and knights not within its scope. Similar to all other schools on the profound continent, it was always nobles who held the important positions within the Imperial Academy. There were several reasons for why so many talented nobles came to be. The first reason being that the astronomical costs associated with attending such an academy caused ordinary civilians to back down. The other reason was that even if a civilian managed to enroll in the Imperial Academy, they would find it extremely difficult to find a good teacher who could teach them systemically about military affairs. However, nothing was ever set in stone. The Imperial Academy would still occasionally see 1 or 2 civilian students. These civilians would still manage to reveal their talents even under such unfavorable conditions. They were so brilliant that they managed to steal the limelight from the other students of noble descent. In such an academy, unparalleled geniuses would receive a multitude of offers from the greatest of teachers, guaranteeing their success as long as these talented civilian teenagers appeared docile and clever. There would always be talent-seeking nobles and generals who would attempt to recruit them. Of course, there were also a few wild and unruly civilian teenagers who didn't know to conceal their brilliance, which angered their fellow noble students. In the worst case scenario, they would be killed by their fellow students out of jealousy, or if their luck permitted, their careers would be obstructed, losing their chance to join the military. Dorcas was exactly this kind of unlucky genius. The young Dorcas had once been unsurpassed in the Imperial Academy, but he became too haughty and didn't conceal his talent, falling in love with an earl's daughter. This made the girl's father and her fiancé's family very angry indeed. The end result was that Dorcas had been groundlessly accused of crimes. Not only was he expelled from the Imperial Academy, but he was also hunted down by the two families and almost lost his life. He had been forced to become a fugitive. This had happened about a year ago. The Dark Mantle's records had details of this incident, and Han Shao had also read through this intelligence when he'd exercised his rights in the Dark Mantle headquarters. It had left a deep impression on him, and he hadn't thought that he'd be able to meet this civilian military genius here. Dorcas was standing on a wooden raft. His once haughty face was now a bit more melancholy due to the bitter experiences he had faced. He stood straight and looked off into the distance. He turned his head and said to the bandit leader, "Captain, the people holding torches should be those from Bretel City. After we acquire the 50,000 gold coins, we should refrain from appearing in the vicinity of that city. The city lord named Brian isn't an easy person to deal with. If we don't leave quickly enough, not only will we have to give up the gold coins, but even our lives will be forfeit. Don't worry, I'm not stupid enough to stay behind and let the people who killed Rebbe Retrotus around me. Hey, let Laxi and the rest experience the rage of these people. 10,000 gold coins is enough for us to live comfortably for quite a while." This bandit leader wasn't a fool. He cackled and expressed his satisfaction that after a lifetime of small jobs he was able to split 10,000 gold coins for their efforts. Han Shao had seen everything through the eyes of the Yin demon. He took a careful look at the raft that Jack and the others were on before turning to Falk and saying, "Hand the carts with the gold coins over to them. We cannot lose a single merchant." "Sir Count, are we really just going to submit to them just like this?" "We've already prepared many ways to counter them," Falk said anxiously upon hearing that Han Shao intended to hand over the money without a fight, trying and failing to suppress his doubts. "The Imperial Academy genius Dorcas is out there. If we are to go through with the original plan we created, then we would be at a complete disadvantage. Water lies in the distance. We won't have an opportunity to act without them harming the merchants. We should give them the gold coins first as ransom for the merchants and war equipment. We can discuss the matter of annihilating the bandits after they arrive safely back in our hands." Before they'd arrived, Han Shao had planned to have the Earth Elite Zombie strike out in an ambush. Had they been in the forest, then the Wood Elite Zombie would be able to quickly ensure the safety of the merchants. Unfortunately, the cunning Dorcas had chosen the middle of a river as their place of transaction. Han Shao had no other option since the Water Elite Zombie had yet to finish developing. "All right, I'll go now." Falk nodded his head. He didn't have a better idea either. He mounted his horse and rode forward, opening his mouth and shouting, "Carry the boxes with the gold coins next to the river. We're going to make the trade with the bandits." Han Shao had purposely filled one box with gold coins and not crystal cards. The original plan had been to dump the box filled with gold coins amongst the bandits. The suspicions of the allied bandits would surely explode and result in a fight over the gold coins. As such, the Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie would be able to ambush them. Now that Han Shao and the others were in a passive position, they naturally could not force this scenario. When the clinking of gold coins sounded out, the bandits drew near on their wooden rafts, with those behind them raising their bows, taking aim at the knights on the shore. The bandits in the front slowly pushed the merchants and equipment to a more shallow location along the riverbanks. Dorcas was indeed cautious enough, never allowing the rafts to wash ashore. The merchants and the battle wagons all waited to the banks a close distance away, not providing Han Shao's side with a single chance to act. After a case of gold coins were hauled aboard a raft by two bandits, a loud cheer arose from amongst the ranks of the bandits. The arrogant bandits laughed excitedly, with many leaders praising that the Imperial Academy's Dorcas, saying that he was very able indeed. Dorcas, responsible for the scheme, did not smile. His expression from start to finish was one of gloomy remoteness. Under the cheering of the bandits, his eyes held a hint of hesitation, as if this arguably perfect plan was a disgrace. Amongst the excited clamor, the bandits were taking advantage of the fact that the raft was slowly floating away to suddenly extinguish all the torches in their hands when they were 50 meters away from Han Shao and the others. The bandits ceased their mad laughter under the berating of their leaders. The moonless night was pitch black. Having lost their light and sound, no one could clearly see what path they were taking when they were 50 meters out out, the only exception being Han Shao. These bandits didn't cross the river and disembark but instead paddled along with the river, making use of the current. Dorcas shook his head at the bandits, who were silent but were squirming around with all sorts of weird postures to convey their excitement. He sighed inwardly, not knowing if it was right to use these bandits to exact his revenge, but now that he was considered a fugitive unless he carried out the disgraceful actions of becoming a traitor to the Empire and seeking asylum in another country, who else could help him sate his desire for revenge? He was someone who'd been born and raised in the Lancelot Empire in the end. No matter what, he couldn't become a lifelong traitor with unforgivable crimes. Being a bandit was vastly preferable to being a traitor hated by everyone in the Lancelot Empire, right? Falk escorted them back. We're still some distance away from the city, so don't have any mishaps. Han Shao's vision was likewise affected in the inky night. He'd had nearly lost sight of the wooden rafts that were slowly floating away. When the merchants and war weapons had all clambered ashore, Han Shao hurriedly turned to Falk and gave his orders. "Sir Count, are we not going to hunt and slaughter those rotten bandits?" Falk asked, looking at him confusedly. "If you safely escort this equipment and the merchants back to the city, I'll forget about your previous negligence. Remember, the area outside of Bretel City still isn't safe. Make sure you don't overlook anything again." Han Shao was thinking of the constant threat from the 7 Grand Duchies, as well as the larger bandit groups wandering between the duchies and Bretel City. He gravely warned Falk to be careful. Falk's goal this time was to redeem himself through meritorious acts. It was because he was constantly thinking about this that he'd lost his usual cool-headedness during this extraction mission. He immediately came to his senses after hearing Han Shao's warnings and realized that he had become too obsessed. He calmly said, "Rest assured, Sir Count, I will definitely ensure their safety and bring them back to the city." Seeing that Falk's eyes had regained their calm, Han Shao relaxed. He knew that Falk had recovered from his urgent desire of redeeming himself. He patted Falk on the shoulder and said in a gratified manner, "Be careful." He left nimbly like a light wind after speaking. Han Shao's figure quickly flashed out of sight in the pitch black night. Falk and the others didn't know what Han Shao was planning to do. "You lot use your war horses to pull the carts. You over there dismount and give the merchants your horses. Hurry up, we need to take advantage of this darkness to return to the city. Stay sharp. We're all going to be in for it if something happens." Falk began loudly giving orders after Han Shao disappeared. The knights that Falk brought quickly executed his orders, organizing the merchants and tying up the battle wagons and other materials, slowly making their way back to Bretel City. Dorcas was standing on a wooden raft, his gloomy face flickering between red and white with the lights of the torches. He looked at some of the bandits busily splitting a chest full of gold coins in the next raft over. He asked with awful timing, "That matter that you promised me, when are you going to do it?" "Relax, Dorcas. As long as you help us with a few more of these business transactions and we earn enough gold coins to grow strong from recruits, even hiring soldiers and wiping the dukedom off the map won't even be a problem then." A bandit leader amongst them casually fobbed off Dorcas's inquiry. He turned to another leader beside him, smiling lecherously, "Tukil, we'll soon bring our brothers to the Full Spring Garden brothel to play. These gold coins are enough for us to play for a while." Hey, our brothers have always wanted to go and try it out. Unfortunately, those refugees from Bretel City didn't have much on them. We didn't really earn much in all these years. Now that we finally have money, we should thoroughly enjoy it. "I like your suggestion, Laxi. Ha ha, let's go together." Bandit leader Tuka laughed and rubbed his chin. He chatted knowingly about the smaller bandit groups within. The smaller ones comprised of 70 to 80 bandits and the larger ones around 200. They specialized in robbing refuges between Bretel City and Seamist City. They had no ambition or great accomplishments to their name at all. Otherwise they would have gone and raided Bretel City long ago. These people didn't plan on upgrading their subordinates' weapons and armor after earning these gold coins, but instead harbored thoughts of enjoying their lives to the fullest. They didn't appear to give a damn about the promise they'd made to Dorcas. Dorcas, a student of the Imperial Academy, wasn't an outstanding swordsman or knight. He'd spent all his time studying military strategy and tactical skills. Even though he was one 9 meters tall, his strength wasn't strong at all. To these crude and uncivilized bandits, this kind of weak strategist who didn't pose a threat to them and was able to scheme and create plans for them was very handy indeed. They weren't in a hurry to help him exact revenge at all. "You guys promised me that you would help me take revenge after we got the gold coins." Dorcas stared at the bandit leaders who were unrestrainedly talking about which girls' breasts were the largest and which girls' asses were the plumpest. Dorcas' muffled voice carrying over the water. "The most important thing is to let the brothers rest and have a hell of a time after working so hard for so long." "Dorcas, let's talk about this matter later. I'll help you find a girl to thoroughly enjoy. She'll definitely be a lot more worth it than that little noble girl you like, haha." Even the leader that Dorcas was following was also laughing heartily without any cares, completely setting aside his promises to Dorcas. "Aha, we're here. Once we get ashore and walk for a bit, we'll arrive at the Narsen Duchy's Tulian town. The girls in the full spring garden are awaiting us." Laxi excitedly laughed, instructing his subordinates, "Hurry up. Stop the rafts, your boss will take you to have some fun." Dorcas wore an unsightly expression. He resented these untrustworthy bandits, but he knew that his own strength was limited. He was angry to the point of erupting, but he didn't have any other choice. He could only stare at the bandits who were disembarking the rafts one by one, walking happily towards the full spring garden in Tulian town. "My friends who have so graciously taken my 50,000 gold coins, I've been waiting a long time for you." Suddenly the silence of the night was broken by the sound of a young man laughing. The silhouette of an extremely large person gradually appeared beneath the flickering light of the bandits' torches blocking their way. Chapter 328. "I will be your hunting hound." The extremely tall figure was gradually revealed beneath the illumination of the torches as the mocking laughter rang out. It was a handsome young man with a strange and evil smile. The young man was around 1.90 something centimeters tall. When he stood there, he was like an unsheathed sword, giving people an intense visual impact. An azure warrior uniform emphasized his refined physique. His mouth showed a faint smile that gave off an aura of playfulness, like an eagle in the sky planning to toy with a rabbit that was frantically running away on the ground. He seemed both confident and at ease. The frightened bandits hurriedly looked around when the young man revealed himself, as if they thought that there were more people behind the young man, which caused their nervousness and wariness to peak. "Stop looking around. There's only me," Han Sha-o explained with a faint smile, then stopped looking at the bandit leader that clearly let out a sigh of relief. He merely set his gaze on Dorcas, who was standing stiffly amongst the crowd, and asked, "Do you think these bandits who only know how to enjoy themselves and are unable to achieve anything will be able to help you to exact revenge?" Dorcas revealed an indifferent expression. Then after a moment of silence he looked at Han Sha-o. "That is none of your business. You came for the 50,000 gold coins, right?" Han Sha-o shook his head with a smile, then continued to fix his gaze on Dorcas while saying dashingly, "No, 50,000 gold coins might be a huge amount of money in the eyes of these bandits, but not in mine. The reason I followed you guys was not for the 50,000 gold coins, but for you, Dorcas." Dorcas had a sudden change in expression and stared hatefully at Han Sha-o, as if wishing to firmly commit Han Sha-o's appearance to memory. Then he smiled sadly. "I hadn't that the two families would still have the desire to come after me after so much time had passed. I never would have thought that I would be worth so much." "Ha, stop the bullshit. You're just a single man and you dare to block our path. You're just seeking death." Lakesy, the bandit leader, wanted to hurry along to the full spring garden. He suddenly roared loudly after confirming that Han Sha-o was indeed alone and able to suppress the urgency in his heart. The other bandit leaders all agreed after hearing Lakesy's roar. It seems like their lust had caused them to be unable to withstand the situation any longer. Under the orders of the bandit leaders, their underlings, equally urgent, quickly surrounded Han Sha-o while wielding worthless weapons. Han Sha-o had a smile on his face from the start. He was completely indifferent towards the actions of these bandits who only thirsted for the smooth skin of women. He continued to gaze at Dorcas and shook his head slightly. He finally decided to explain upon seeing Dorcas' confused expression, "You might be both worthless and a hot potato to others, but you are worth far more than 50,000 gold coins to me. I will explain to you in detail later after I clean up these bandits. Then I'll take my time to discuss with you your true value." "Prideful fellow, you are asking for death." Lexi gazed at Han Shuo with rage. He waved his hands and shouted, "Kill him! He's definitely that evil necromancer. Close in on him and don't give him the chance to chant any spells. Aha, he is the new city lord of Bretel City. Just look at that space ring on his hand. He's definitely a fat target. Brothers, take the space ring for me. I can already imagine the wealth within the space ring." Bandit leader Tu cawed weirdly in excitement. He raised the bored double-edged battle axe in his hands and stared greedily at the space ring on Han Shuo's finger. Dong, dong, dong. Just as the bandit underlings were about to tear Han Shuo to shreds, the sound of dull footsteps suddenly rang out. "What's that?" Exclamation mark. Lexi's messy eyebrows tensed, becoming two irregular triangles as he looked around and asked loudly. The underlings had been about to make a move but looked around in confusion when they heard Lexi's shout. Dong, 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 dong. As the dull footsteps neared, several branches with sparse leaves began to shake, notifying these third-rate bandits that even the ground was slightly shaking. However, even if they had a torch, the distance that the torch could illuminate was still very limited on this pitch-dark night. This was why the bandits could only hear increasingly loud footsteps drawing closer to them, but they were unable to see what it was no matter how hard they looked around. "That, my friends, is the sound that the metal hooves of the fire-spurting steeds of the evil knights make. Everyone, no need to look around, you're all doomed," Han Shuo suddenly explained with a smile in the midst of being surrounded by the bandits. "Damn it, he already summoned his undead creatures. Kill him immediately. As long as he dies, the undead creatures won't be too much if a threat without his orders." The light adept mage, who had been hired by the bandits with a lot of gold, quickly exclaimed as he lost his calm. The bandit leaders were frightened and unsure of what to do. They all yelled at their underling loudly when they heard the light adept mages shout, "You idiots, kill him quickly!" The underlings swung back into action when they heard their leaders give them the same order to kill. They brandished the weapons in their hands and charged Han Shuo, trying to kill him before the undead creatures arrived. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Under the flickering red light of the torches, long thin black bone spears shot up from Han Shuo. These bone spears flew out with extreme speed and were like rays of life reaping black light. The unending bone spears actually seemed to be connected to each together, causing Han Shuo to look like a strange black peacock with its tail fully opened. The bandits who charged over let out a dense series of terrible howls sounding like firecrackers. When Han Shuo opened his tail, the bone spears either easily pierced their armor, which was only worth several silver coins anyways, or penetrated deep into the gaps between their bones or guts, sending blood flying everywhere. The bone spears didn't diminish in power as they pierced the bandits' bodies. They had enough momentum to even string up the bandit behind the first one, making this sort of tremendous impact truly terrifying. In the blink of an eye, the roughly 30 bandits that had charged forward had all been fatally pierced by the bone spears amidst their terrible wails. The blood covering the ground became strangely beautiful under the illumination of the torches that had fallen to the ground. The dense smell of blood instantly spread into the noses and mouths of the bandit leaders. Not good. Lexi's lust was gradually extinguished by the bone-piercing cold as he saw Han Shuo slowly rise from the mounds of corpses and blood. An intense flame of fear incinerated everything in his mind. Dong dong. The dull footsteps pounded on the hearts of every single bandit like beating drums. The things that they had only heard but couldn't see now appeared behind them one by one. These things did not have eyes. Instead, their sockets were filled with flickering flames. Under the illumination of their burning eyes, enormous figures gradually appeared from the darkness. Tuka's lips suddenly became strangely dry. He couldn't even speak smoothly as he muttered softly, "Everyone, those are evil knights, run." The hands of the two light mages trembled as they held their staffs. They had been hired with a lot of gold. However, purifying light magic at their current level of strength was truly limited. What's more, there were actually more than 10 evil knights in front of them. Thanks to the blurry light, their sharp eyesight could see many more shadows behind the evil knights. These bandits had indeed heard of the rumors that Han Shuo had obliterated the bandit Troda and others at the foot of Mount Talai. However, They'd thought that it had been done by the many soldiers of Bretel City as well as Fulkin's mountain people. There was no way that they would have factored the appearance of an archmage necromancer with mental strength on par with the Grand Magus as well as a bone staff that doubled the number of summoned undead creatures. Just how many could Hansha-O summon? Sorry, we don't want the wages anymore. The light adept mage turned around and looked towards Dorcas, then said to the other light journeyman mage, give them back the gold coins. The two light mages poured out roughly 1,000 gold coins from their money bags. The adept mage bowed slightly toward Hansha-O in the distance and said in fearful yet respectful tone, this doesn't have much to do with us. Please allow us to leave. You two despicable mages. How dare you actually run away first? I'll kill you myself. Dorcas bandit leader roared and then charged at the two light mages who wanted to retreat. I don't know why, but I'm starting to dislike light mages more and more. Also, I really hate your actions of defecting at the last minute. I think it's better if you stayed. Hansha-O gazed coldly at the two mages who only knew how to save their own skin very well and responded plainly. Due to the wave of dense bone spears, none of the bandits dared to draw near to Hansha-O. All of them stayed as far away from Hansha-O as they could. However, there was still a large number of undead creatures behind them, so they were still dead no matter how they looked at it. Pierce. A bandit right next to an evil knight was pierced through by the evil knight's enormous bone spear and hoisted up high. The slaughter began the moment this bandit's corpse hit the floor. The 10 evil knights slowly drowned the bandits with endless death along with the roughly 1,000 different undead creatures. The night was as dark as ink. The torches began to extinguish as the bandits were killed one by one, and the darkness of the night gradually affected the bandits' vision. However, the undead creatures were like fish in water during the night. They silently slaughtered everything in front of them, not knowing what mercy was. Dorcas had also revealed a terrified expression when all sorts of terrible howls started ringing out, standing out for his peculiarities as he held the torch amongst the crowd of people. Evil knights and zombies walked past him as if they didn't know that there was a delicious human body standing beside them. He didn't seem to exist to them as they only slaughtered the living around him. When the stark-straight Dorcas noticed that none of the undead creatures attacked him, the fear in his heart gradually resided. Due to the treachery of the bandit leaders earlier, even though Dorcas had originally been their comrade, he felt a hint of joy as he watched them die. Good riddance, that scum should have been dealt with ages ago. Dorcas muttered to himself as he looked at the bloody slaughter with indifference. The two light mages were the first to receive the brunt of the bandits' attack after Hansha-O's merciless refusal. The two light mages who had originally been able to threaten the undead creatures a bit nearly drowned in the furious attacks of the bandits. After the bandits had done away with the light mages, they were then consumed by a wave of undead creatures. As time passed in the pitch dark night, the terrible unending screams gradually came to a halt. After a while, only Dorcas holding a torch with an indifferent expression was left. There was also a ground covered in corpses apart from him, as well as a few ghouls munching on the corpses. That was a bit gory, but I hope you don't mind. Hansha-O floated towards Dorcas with a smile. He didn't seem gentle at all as he smiled amidst a ground full of corpses. Instead, there was another sort of terror and sinister atmosphere about him. The fact that the ghouls feeding on the ground all left Dorcas' side when Hansha-O neared only emphasized that all of this horror had resulted from this young man with a strange and evil smile. Dorcas took in a deep breath and forcefully stopped himself from vomiting. He placed his focus on Hansha-O in an attempt to soften the hideous scene painted around him. What do you want? I know some things about you, and I can also understanding the endless anger in your heart. I want to give you a chance to release your vengeance. Hansha-O offered this extremely alluring suggestion with a smile. This wasn't something that anyone could bestow on him. Before Hansha-O displayed the savageness of slaughtering all of the bandits, Dorcas wouldn't have thought that the Lord of Bretel City, someone who'd found it hard to keep himself safe, could give him any sort of chance. However, Dorcas now had reason to believe that as long as Hansha-O was willing, the revenge that had seemed impossible to take was nothing difficult in front of this man as savage as a demon. Due to this, Dorcas only hesitated for a moment before nodding. As long as you can take revenge for me, I can do anything for you. Han Sha-o shook his head and said slowly with a smile, "It's not that I will take revenge for you, it's you who will take revenge for yourself." When Dorcas frowned, Han Sha-o explained with a smile, "I will give you the chance to take revenge with your own hands. With your talent, the two families will be dancing in the palm of your hand sooner or later." He isn't torturing them to death bit by bit with your own hands much better than letting someone else kill them? The girl that had fallen in love with Dorcas had now become his enemy's plaything. Due to the girl's relationship with Dorcas, her fiancé treated her savagely. The pitiful girl was completely helpless as she washed her face with tears every day. Although the girl's family was unhappy about this, there was nothing they could do about it, as their daughter was already married. What's more, her husband's family was of a higher position, so her father could only blame all of it on Dorcas. He did not hold back in his pursuit of Dorcas. It could only be said that Dorcas possessed great luck to be able to survive the chase for so long. The Dark Mantle knew about all this, but in the world where nobles ruled, even though the commoner-born Dorcas was shockingly talented in militaristic affairs, it was not enough to change these unwritten rules that had existed for several thousand years. The Dark Mantle would only kill the nobles that had betrayed the empire. However, nobles occasionally bullying a few peasants wasn't a huge matter. It was even more negligible if the bullied peasant didn't have any backing. The Dark Mantle had countless other things to do. They naturally would not waste their effort on minute matters like these. The fact that they had a note of this in their records was already due to Dorcas' strategic talent. Otherwise there probably wouldn't even be a record of his name. "I am a fugitive. How could I possibly use my power to kill my own enemies?" Dorcas was clearly moved by Han Sha-o's suggestion. However, since Dorcas had shown with brilliance in the Imperial Academy, he was naturally not a fool. He looked at Han Sha-o and asked, after pondering for a while, "Whether you are fugitive in Bretel City or not is decided by me, the city lord. I know about your identity and hatred. The fact that I dare to accept you means that I am not afraid of your identity as a fugitive." After saying this with a slight smile, Han Sha-o raised a finger and pointed in the direction of the 7 duchies, then said enticingly, "Aside from intense hatred, I can also see arrogant ambition that cannot be concealed in your eyes. Bretel City is a hunting ground for the 7 duchies. However, they are also a hunting ground for me. Are you willing to become a hunter like me?" Dorcas gazed deeply at Han Sha-o. After a while he prostrated himself toward Han Sha-o without any regards to the blood on the ground and said solemnly, "Sir Count, I am not a hunter, but I will be your hunting hound." Chapter 329. Friends, the day had yet to brighten completely. In the soft purple and gray glow of dawn, the morning light slowly chased away the darkness in the sky as cool winds gently blew over. The golden sun slowly burst out with 1,000 rays of splendor after a while. Upon their return to Bretel City, Han Sha-o and Dorcas were surprised to find that Falk and the knights had also just arrived. Han Sha-o could see traces of battle from their bodies and even see that some had disappeared eternally. Dorcas rode on a thin weak horse that had been taken from the bandits as he slowly followed Han Sha-o back to Bretel City. Upon entering the city, the first things to greet his eyes were 2 mighty magic crystal cannons mounted on the city walls. Not only were the previously old broken down walls now shining brightly, their height had also increased. Looking at the city from a distance, Dorcas even felt that Bretel City had recovered a bit of its former prestige and magnificence. Nodding to himself, Dorcas turned back to look at Han Sha-o, who was quickly entering the city with a slightly darkened expression on his face. Dorcas understood that for Bretel City to have changed like this, the credit entirely belonged to this new city lord. What happened? Did something happen again? Where are the merchants and the battle equipment? Han Sha-o was like a ghost drifting by. His cold shout, along with the cool winds of early morning, made the still fearful Falk jump out of his skin. Hurriedly turning around to see that it was Han Sha-o, Falk heaved a sigh of relief. He hastily straightened his body and explained, "Your lordship, some small incidents occurred on our way back. Our torches attracted the attention of many bandit groups, but luckily that area was near Mount Talai. Before the bandits could rush over the mountain, leader Fulkin came down to assist us. The merchants and battle equipment are still safe and sound, and only 3 knights died." Han Sha-o's heart slowly returned to its proper place upon hearing that the merchants and equipment were all safe. He looked at Falk with a faint nod and Han said in a softened tone, arrange proper funerals for the knights who've died. Our top mission is to exterminate all of the bandits in the surroundings before the 7 Grand Duchies arrive. Rest assured, your lordship, I Fox swear to take revenge for our brothers. Fox's tone was determined as he took out his sword to point it towards the sky and solemnly make a vow. Dorcas rode the weak horse over to this side with clopping sounds. He'd taken meticulous looks at the city's defensive measures. Contemplation filled his eyes. When he arrived in front of Han Shao, Dorcas looked at the latter with a measuring look before opening his mouth to propose. There were 17 bandit groups between Bretel City and Seamist City. Taking away the 5 that you annihilated last night, there are still 12 left. The scales of these bandit groups aren't much, but they are as annoying as hateful flies. I think you should exterminate them first. Otherwise the safety of the merchants won't be guaranteed later. Your lordship, are all of those greedy bandits dead? Fogg queried upon hearing Dorcas' words. Nodding his head, Han Shao answered, that's right. All 5 bandit groups are finished. Let me introduce someone to you. This is Dorcas from the Imperial Academy of Strategy. Perhaps you've heard about some of his past deeds. He will be your comrade from now on. No one is allowed to mention his identity as a fugitive in the future. Yes, your lordship, Fogg immediately replied, his eyes looking at Dorcas with a hint of admiration. He also didn't ask Han Shao why Dorcas was joining Bretel City. It had been this person who'd single-handedly planned the robbery and transaction. Dorcas had held the advantage from beginning to end and played with their group in the palm of his hand. Even Han Shao ultimately had to surrender the 50,000 gold coins. The intellect of this person was indeed the real deal. Take out 1,000 knights for Dorcas from the 3,000 you're training. Dorcas will be the captain of that team. Han Shao gave Fogg an order before looking over to Dorcas. Dorcas, wipe out the remaining 12 bandit groups between Bretel City and Seamist City for me. Dorcas dismounted from the weak warhorse and saluted Han Shao with a standard military posture. He said crisply and neatly, yes, your lordship. Nodding his head, Han Shao once again turned towards Fogg and said, the equipment for the city's defenses that have just arrived are for you to assemble in the appropriate positions. Do this well for me during this time, as well as keep an eye on other matters within the city. Prepare to deal with the attacks of the bandits and 7 Grand Duchies at any moment. Rest assured, your lordship, with this defensive equipment I will make sure that anyone who dares to come and pillage Bretel City pay with their blood. Fogg promise. Right, what arrangements did you make for the merchants? Han Shao asked Fogg, suddenly remembering that he hadn't seen little Fatty Jack in a long time, and also Fabian as well. I've arranged places for them in the city lord's mansion. Your lordship's mansion is quite large and is currently the safest place in Bretel City, so I have arranged for the honored merchants to be located there. Fogg answered. Well done. I won't pursue your negligence any longer. Dorcas is a new addition to Bretel City, so help him familiarize himself with the city. Also place 1,000 soldiers under his command. Han Shao gave his orders. He nodded towards Dorcas before leaving the city gates. Han Shao appeared in the city lord's mansion after a short while. More than 10 merchants had been settled in. These merchants had fallen into a deep sleep like dead pigs after the big fright. 1 or 2 of them occasionally whimpered in their nightmares, their bodies drenching in cold sweat. Little Jack of the Boost Merchant Guild was tightly hugging a pillow, the corner of his mouth dripping with saliva in his sleep. Han Shao soundlessly walked in front of him. He revealed a knowing smile upon seeing Jack's ugly sleeping posture. Back in the necromancy department at the Babylon Academy, Han Shao recalled how he and little Fatty Jack had swept the ground quickly with brooms. He also remembered when his body had still been weak and his magical cultivation still hadn't taken shape, this little Fatty had stolen black bread to feed him. Han Shao even recalled the time that he fought with other necromancy students. Separated for more than 2 years, little Fatty Jack actually hadn't changed too much. He was still ever so simple and honest. However, his body was becoming increasingly fatter. It was Han Shao himself who changed the most. During these past 2 years, Han Shao had grown from an errand boy to the point where no one dared to look down on him, be it his intelligence or his strength. Having experienced one dangerous battle after another, Han Shao's body, mental strength and magical yuan had developed rapidly. He'd made breakthroughs again and again, many times with his life on the line. And now he held the titles of Count and City Lord. As for this little fatty who lusted after food and wealth all day. He was still an accountant for the Boost Merchant Guild. This brat will keep eating and drinking well in the Boost Merchant Guild and won't have to meet with any danger. Phoebe gives me face and takes special care of him. Although his days aren't as interesting, they're very peaceful. Han Sha-oh smiled and murmured as he looked at the drooling sleeping fatty. Not waking up little fatty Jack from his deep sleep, Han Sha-oh stood outside the window to look at him for a while. He then turned to leave, intending to chat later after he woke up. Han Sha-oh had just taken a few steps when he heard a sudden loud cry from inside Fabian's room. He hastily walked into Fabian's room and found the latter sitting up on the bed, drenched with sweat and a look of fear still lingering on his face. It turned out that he'd had a terrifying nightmare. Seeing Han Sha-oh suddenly come in, the newly jolted awake Fabian cried out once again. Only when he discovered that the person who'd come was Han Sha-oh did Fabian shut his mouth. He turned to give Han Sha-oh an ugly smile before saying with a somewhat embarrassed expression, "These past several years with the young miss have been all too peaceful. After encountering such a dangerous incident once again, I've discovered that I'm becoming more and more afraid of death. Maybe I've gotten too old now. I can no longer tolerate dangerous adventures like I used to. I just want to continue my life with quiet, peaceful days." Hearing Fabian say so, Han Sha-oh recalled the first time they met and revealed a relaxed smile. He found himself a chair and sat down before saying to Fabian, "Such is life. If you want more wealth and a more prominent position, you have to put in more effort and handle greater danger. Hey, it was my carelessness that caused you guys to encounter this kind of incident this time. Fortunately, everyone came out unscathed, otherwise I really wouldn't be able to forgive myself." Among these people, the merchants had all come here because of the benefits that Han Sha-oh promised them, apart from Fabian and Jack. If these people died, Han Sha-oh would only feel pity and immediately find a way to make it up for their guilds, lest their guilds lose their confidence in him. But for Fabian and Jack, Han Sha-oh truly cared for them, especially Jack. Jack had been Han Sha-oh's best friend since when he was still a nobody with nothing. If Jack died because of his carelessness, Han Sha-oh would never forgive himself. He might even blame himself to the point of breaking down in the short run. Fabian looked at the young man who was over 1 meter 90 centimeters tall standing before him. He inwardly tried to overlap this person with that thin weak figure that he'd met for the first time in the dark forest. Fabian discovered that he couldn't do so no matter how hard he tried, just based on the change in body size alone. Time could change everything, so Fabian couldn't help but feel emotional. The older he became, the more timid he grew. However, Han Sha-oh was the opposite. He developed from a youngster to a young man whom no one dared to underestimate. Han Sha-oh's power had become increasingly stronger as he slowly revealed himself to be a striking figure in the upper echelons of society. For His Majesty the King to allow Han Sha-oh to take up the mess that was Bretel City, it absolutely wasn't a poor posting that those unaware were gossiping about. It was actually the tempering for an invincible sword. Fabian looked at the young man in front of him, the look in his eyes deepening as he was unable to understand the latter's inner thoughts. A flash of inspiration suddenly struck him. "This is the letter that young Miss Phoebe asked me to personally hand to you." Fabian took out an envelope emitting a faint fragrance with a rose printed on it. He respectfully placed it in Han Sha-oh's hand. "All right," told Fabian. "You continue to rest. I still need to console the frightened merchants after they wake up. Many industries in Bretel City are awaiting investment. Cooperation with other major merchant guilds will certainly be more intimate from now on. Apart from the current urgent shortage of weapons and equipment, I also need a steady stream of food and pharmaceuticals. I will be depending on you for all of this." Han Sha-oh put away the fragrant letter before saying to Fabian with a smile, With the relationship between you and young Miss Phoebe, the Boost Merchant Guild will definitely give you our full support." Fabian also understood the two's relationship. He winked at Han Sha-oh and spoke humorously with a meaningful smile. "Of course I won't treat the Boost Merchant Guild badly either. Your leader Phoebe included," Han Sha-oh said smilingly, his face delighted as he left Fabian's room. The open door closed slowly by a wave of force after he left. "He is getting more and more powerful." Young Miss Phoebe is indeed a true businesswoman. She knew to invest in him before he even accomplished his great deeds. It seems the Boost Merchant Guild will definitely bloom and usher in a new era of glory in the hands of young Miss. Fabian whispered thoughtfully to himself as he watched the door close automatically without wind. Phoebe, ah Phoebe, I've received your love. In his room, Han Shao murmured to himself with a cute smile after reading the fragrant letter. Brettel City had been bathing in a happy, joyous atmosphere 3 days later. The center of the city lord's mansion was filled with the sounds of chatter and laughter. The food festival wasn't considered a big festival in the Lancelot Empire. However, Han Shao was placing great importance on this festival because the merchants had arrived safely. Moreover, he wanted to use them to send some messages. Rows of tables that were over 10 meters long were set up in front of the city lord's mansion. Various fine snacks and deliciously aromatic steaming hot meals came out in turns from the wide open gates of the city lord's mansion. Any civilian in Brettel City was free to enjoy this food to their heart's content. The civilians coming because of the news took only 10 seconds to get past their initial doubts, becoming deliriously happy instead. Knights in shining armor maintained order with a polite, refined manner and smiles on their faces. Exquisite food had been arranged on a luxurious round sandalwood table inside the city lord's mansion. Dick had prepared for the merchants who'd escaped death. Fabian, on the other hand, seemed to become a co-host as he helped Han Shao entertain the guests who came from distant areas. He placed gold coins directly in their hands for the war chariots and equipment that they'd transported. The merchants' grants grew even wider after they'd received their payment, ceaselessly showering praises upon Han Shao, who was sporting a refined smile. They declared that this business was just the beginning of a great partnership and that whatever Han Shao needed would be delivered in an endless stream. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone, Han Shao picked up his glass of fine red wine, his voice resounding loudly throughout the entire audience. The profit-seeking merchants were currently overjoyed as they received their payment. Everyone immediately stopped their noisy chattering and smiled as they looked up to see Han Shao's dashing figure waiting for him to continue his speech. When the hubbub had quieted down, Han Shao said with a slight smile, "Ladies and gentlemen, this transaction is just the beginning. Brettel City needs a steady stream of goods and resources. The harvest from the mines of the surrounding mountains is also priceless. From now on you will definitely be able to obtain more wealth in this city." Pausing for a bit, Han Shao's smile disappeared as he raised his voice to speak gravely. As a city that had been trampled on by bandits and foreign countries for too many years, Brettel City has been through too much hardship and pain. No other city has been through so much agony and humiliation like this city in the Lancelot Empire. His Majesty bestowed upon me Brettel City. I accepted it with a heavy heart and the mission to bring back its prosperity. However, my power alone is limited, but I will create good conditions that are favorable for you so that you can obtain what you need in Brettel City. The merchants weren't stingy with applause that didn't cost them anything. After the rain of applause, the not too luxurious banquet continued. Little fatty Jack and Fabian walked over to Han Shao. Jack looked up at the tall, imposing Han Shao and said, "Brian, I don't want to stay at Austin City anymore. It's so boring. Let me stay in Brettel City. I can help you." Han Shao was surprised. He subconsciously raised his glass to clink with Jack's for a toast. After finishing the glass of fine wine, he spoke unhurriedly after some hesitation. "Jack, only the two of us know how deep our relationship goes. It's not that I don't want you to stay here, but this is a very dangerous place. You will be in constant life-threatening danger. As a friend, I advise you to remain at the Boost Merchant Guild. That way at least you will always be safe." Jack shook his head, the layers of fat on his face also shaking. He turned to look at the shocked Fabian by his side and said, "The Boost Merchant Guild is too peaceful. I'm still too young. I'm very grateful to young Miss Phoebe and you for always taking care of me, but Jessica has said that the one she likes must be an experienced knight or noble. I feel that no matter how much I try, young Miss Phoebe can't make me a knight or a noble, but maybe you can, Brian." Han Shao was speechless. He hadn't expected that because of a lady the always timid, cowardly little fatty Jack could also grow to possess this dangerous item called ambition. Chapter 330. preparing for war, Jack. Are you truly prepared to face the dangers that are to come? Fabian asked Jack after he let out a long sigh. He could see the same prideful and fearless spirit that he used to have emanating from Jack. Nodding heavily, Jack said stubbornly, yes, I've made up my mind. Seeing that Jack was insistent, Fabian shook his head and didn't say anything more. He understood in his heart that Jack had finally grown up. Maybe some tempering at Jack's age wasn't a bad thing. Not to mention that Fabian knew that Han Shuo would definitely take good care of Jack and never allow his friend to get hurt. Fabian's silence meant that he was no longer opposed to the idea. Jack then turned towards Han Shuo, eyes full of expectation. Han Shuo, half a head taller than Jack, stood in front of him and patted him on the shoulder. He said sincerely, don't rush such a decision for now. Stay in Bretel City for a few days. Let me know after you've thought things through clearly. Bretel City wouldn't be quite so peaceful over the next few days. Maybe when Jack saw the cruel realities of war for himself, he'd automatically drop this idea, Han Shuo thought to himself. Han Shuo didn't continue to talk with Jack about this topic anymore. However, he was rather interested in Jack's favored girl Jessica, and he asked all sorts of things about her. According to Jack's stammering answers, Han Shuo gained an understanding that the girl named Jessica was the daughter of a small noble. Her fathers had done some business with the Boost Merchant Guild and had gotten to know Jack as he'd often visited Boost. At the moment, Jack's love was one-sided. He was a mere accountant of the Merchant Guild, so he naturally couldn't attract the attention of the noble's daughter. Not to mention Jack's chubby body garnered no advantages in his favor. Jack had also found out about Jessica's ideal man by use of sly methods to extract this information. In the profound continent where aristocracy dominated, even Phoebe, the owner of the Boost Merchant Guild, wasn't accepted by the upper class. How could Jack, a small accountant, be accepted then? Therefore Jack now hoped that Han Shuo would help him due to his fanatical love for Jessica and possibly his truly motivated mindset. The joyous atmosphere lasted throughout the banquet, the guests feeling very much at home. Outside of the city lord's mansion, the civilians who'd heard the news were reluctant to disperse and kept on coming. The temptation of free food had exceeded Han Shuo's imagination. The hired servants were busy all day but still couldn't manage to keep up. This situation dragged on until the sun set behind the mountains and the veil of night was about to shroud the earth. Only upon the knight's friendly persuasion did the crowd of civilians finally disperse. The previous night had been without a moon. It was conspicuously bright tonight, as if the moon were making up for yesterday's day off. Standing in the highest bell tower of the city lord's mansion, Han Shuo looked over Bretel City bathed in moonlight. Bretel City was vast as it covered an enormous area. Houses occupied every stretch of land all the way to the city gates in 4 directions, absolutely able to accommodate millions of inhabitants. Bretel City had originally been built as a military base from which to attack the 7 great duchies. Bretel City was still standing proud even after much vicissitudes and humiliation. Had it not suffered the severe retaliation of the 7 great duchies after many failed attempts at conquering them, Bretel City would likely be one of the strongest cities in the Lancelot Empire. A great deal of gold coins had been poured into the renovation of Bretel City. Han Shuo hadn't held back on the heightening and enhancement of the city walls. In addition to the 6 terrifyingly powerful magic crystal cannons, many war chariots and stone-throwing catapults now filled the originally empty posts along the wall. Various equipment of great firepower had been assembled. Bretel City had just begun to reveal its fangs, starting at an unknown time like the ferocious giant war machine it was. After investing millions of gold coins, it was ready to crush all of those arrogant, ambitious invaders that dared to come at a moment's notice. A brigade of 1,000 people gradually made their way back from the direction of Seamist City. This soldier brigade belonged to Dorcas. Their shining weapons and sturdy armor were completely on a different level compared to those of last night. Each sword was worth at least 3 gold coins, and each set of armor and helmet was worth at least 5 gold coins, as they were forged from the finest of steel. Moreover, each soldier was equipped with other sharp, dexterous weapons such as daggers worth over 10 gold coins in value. However, There were soldiers who should have been knights but had temporarily been assigned to the infantry units due to a lack of war horses. War horses were a scarce resource even in the Lancelot Empire. In fact, the 7 great duchies were experts in rearing horses. It was a pity that Han Shuo hadn't found a way to purchase from them. 1,000 soldiers riding war horses advanced orderly towards Bretel City under Dorcas' leadership. These people must have been through many battles. Each looked remote with a subtle glint of madness in their eyes. Their armor and weapons had been polished clean, but the bloodstains on their clothes underneath were very obvious. From the highest point of the city lord's mansion, Han Shuo looked down from above at Dorcas for a while before whispering to himself in satisfaction, 3 days 12 bandit groups. Out of the 1,000 soldiers who departed, 960 have returned safely. Only 40 deaths. Quite a talent indeed. Half an hour later, Dorcas had changed into a clean outfit and walked under the moonlight towards the city lord's mansion. Han Shuo received him in the living room. Dorcas, very well done. Have all 12 bandit groups been completely destroyed? Han Shuo looked at the kneeling Dorcas and asked smilingly. Shaking his head, Dorcas looked up at Han Shuo and said, "Sir Count, there are still over 700 that are still alive." Han Shuo frowned, not yet allowing Dorcas to rise. His finger subconsciously tapped the armrest of his chair. He squinted at Dorcas, asking, "Dorcas, you led 1,000 soldiers out. With your methods you wouldn't have allowed 700 bandits to escape, would you?" Dorcas looked up at Han Shuo, his expression unchanged as he replied, "Sir Count, 12 bandit groups were completely destroyed. All of the obstacles between Seamist and Bretel City have been cleared. Only your humble servant doesn't think that blind killing is a good way. The crimes of those 700 bandits aren't enough to condemn them to death. They were only helpless and forced to commit crimes to survive. This servant feels that if your lordship wants Bretel City to develop as fast as possible, appropriately soft policies are needed apart from the weapon of wholesale slaughter. The bandits are easy to tame. Once they experience some tempering, they will sincerely submit to you, my lord. They will also become your fierce and loyal warriors." Han Shuo was silent for a while after hearing Dorcas' words. He then looked at Dorcas, slowly nodding as he said, "Dorcas, your words aren't wrong. I indeed hadn't considered it carefully. If so, then you must have recruited all 700 of those bandits, but why don't I see them?" Nodding his head, Dorcas was still kneeling on one knee as he hadn't received an order to rise. He said respectfully, "That is right. 742 bandits have all submitted and are cleaning up the battlefield as per my order. My lord, the rotting corpses of refugees are everywhere along the road from Seamist City to Bretel City. This kind of situation is very detrimental to the development of Bretel City, so I've ordered the bandits to clean all of the eyesores from the roadside." "Very good, Dorcas, that's very thoughtful of you. I'm right, all of your people have come back. Aren't you afraid that those bandits will run away?" Han Shuo first praised the other before asking skeptically, "My lord, you may not know that the life of those bandits isn't any better than that of the refugees. I only promised to give them the same treatment as ordinary soldiers in Bretel City, and they agreed without hesitation," Dorcas replied before pausing for a moment. He took out a big bundle, handing it over to Han Shuo with both hands as he said, "A total of 37,000 gold coins were found after raiding the 12 bandit groups. There were also silver, jade and ores of about several thousands gold coins worth, which the soldiers are now transporting to the warehouse. As for some worthless weapons, I left them in the lair of a bandit group for now, as they were too heavy while their value wasn't very high. I felt that there was no need to bring them back, so left them." "Good. Well done. You've thought it out very well. Rise. I will record your accomplishment of great merit. As long as you keep this up, you'll get what you want sooner or later." Han Shuo looked deeply at Dorcas, saying, "Bretel City is your stage. It seems that you are slowly adapting to your new position. Our empire has sent the great armies to the 7 duchies in the east but couldn't dominate them. However, since we're already standing here, we must seize this chance at all costs to soar to new heights. We shall show those mediocre talents of the empire who couldn't do it how we do it. Your servant swears to follow you to the end, my lord." Dorcas let out a loud shout. He stood up straight before Han Shuo like another invincible demon slayer wretch. "Alright, then you are dismissed. The gold coins are temporarily in your care. Consider them the capital for the armor and weapons of the 700 new recruits." Han Shuo signaled Dorcas' dismissal. After the latter left, Han Shuo fell into silence, musing over Dorcas' words about tempting the bandits. He felt that there was indeed some truth to his words. 2 days later, early in the morning, Dick hurriedly came to see Han Shuo with a report. My lord, several large bandit groups of the same size as Stroda's group are gathering in a forest over 6 miles away from Bretel City. I have received this information from a Dark Mantle member conducting a mission in one of the duchies. I heard that these bandit groups have a total of 15,000 people. All are prepared to rush over and furiously pillage our city. It's about time they came. Han Shuo coldly snorted, then said, send some people to keep tabs on their whereabouts. 15,000 bandits? This will be the first real challenge for Bretel City to face. My lord, do you want to notify the chiefs of the mountain people? It's too dangerous this time with just the 3,000 soldiers guarding Bretel City. The mountain people might be able to help us, Dick proposed. Shaking his head, Han Shuo said, not for now. This is a test for us. The results of this battle will determine if I can make them dance to my tune in the future. Humphrey, even though we only have a little over 3,000 soldiers, the walls of Bretel City are no longer tattered like they were before. I've spent so many gold coins on Bretel City. Do they think it's that easy to break? Han Shuo dared to say so because he was quite confident. The soldiers could hide on the high city walls and wait at ease for the enemies to exhaust themselves while using their new equipment such as the great war chariots, fire and stone throwing catapults to attack downwards. The 6 magic crystal cannons were no decorations either. In the worst case, Han Shuo could also summon the great undead army to join the fray. He believed that it absolutely wouldn't be that easy for 15,000 bandits to break into the current Bretel City. The entire Bretel City had unknowingly gone on high alert. Groups of soldiers dragged massive rocks through the streets. However, the war chariots and huge magic crystal cannons that the citizens had grown used to seeing every day became tightly covered under grey cloth for an unknown reason, as if afraid of being discovered. The originally indifferent civilians gradually became more interested in this new city lord. In addition to the bandits being annihilated at Mount Tailai, there was also news of the obliteration of a dozen bandit groups between Seamist City and Bretel City that had been deliberately spread throughout the city. Moreover, an endless stream food had been distributed to them from the city lord's mansion on the food festival yesterday. For once, the civilians had been treated to a fine filling meal. Their confidence towards the city gradually increased. However, they were used to the city lords betraying them at critical moments. As the real crisis had yet to arrive, it was still unknown whether this new city lord was worthy of their trust. Therefore the civilians had yet to sympathize with the new city lord. They only quietly observed the changes in Bretel City with eyes withholding. After one more day, the 4 gates of Bretel City were all shut tightly. Merchants or civilians, all were forbidden from leaving. From time to time, soldiers would appear at the 4 gates to sweep their vigilant eyes across the scene outside. Several small teams of knights on war horses rode tirelessly around the city. Even though the knights didn't say anything, the citizens of Bretel City had been through too many painful wars. They smelled a familiar scent in the air. War was coming.